Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new podcast series called Insider Interviews. This podcast is actually going to be separate from our long-running No BS podcast, and we'll focus on interviews with some movers and shakers in the industry. On this episode, we're honored to have Razer VP of Gaming Peripherals, Ruben Mookerjee. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. On the show. And we'll be picking his brain for the next hour or so, and we'll also be throwing him some of your reader questions as well. So all that and more is coming up right now. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Jimmy Thang, and joining me is Alex Campbell.
Hello, I'm associate editor here, and I build stuff, so...
And then to my left is Ruben, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, he is the vice president and general manager of Gaming Peripherals, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. And just to dive into it, Ruben, why don't you sort of tell us about yourself? How long have you been with Razer? Where have you come from, and all that stuff?
Well, I've been in this role at Razer for about a year, but my partnership with Razer goes back many, many, many years. In fact, Robert Krakoff, Razer Guy, as he's known to many people out in the world, Razer Guy founded the company with the original Razer Boom Slang, and I worked with him actually way back in the late 90s on launching that in Europe in another life. So I've been associated with Razer for a long time.
And I think prior to this, I was looking at peeping your LinkedIn, spying on you. And I believe you were with Logitech and Corsair as well.
Yeah, both great companies. Worked with both those companies for several years.
So you have like a really, long history with gaming peripherals, it seems like, or other companies.
Yeah, I mean, both gaming peripherals and also the PC builder community. I've been a long-time reader of Maximum PC.
Oh, awesome. Cool. And like, what are sort of your day-to-day responsibilities at Razer?
I have a very lucky job. I get to play a lot of games, and that's a great thing to get paid to do. So I'm responsible for product development, product engineering, product marketing for the peripheral side of Razer's business. So Razer has a system side, which is the Blade laptops and Forge TV and products like that. And then the other side, which is peripherals, is mine. So that's the gaming keyboards, gaming mice, gaming audio, some of the new categories we're getting into, like wearables. So,
it seems like, obviously Razer's in a whole bunch of stuff. I always wondered, so we've had other guests come on the show before, from other, peripheral companies and things like that. And then I always, afterwards, I always ask them, like, out of curiosity, who is your biggest competitor? And a lot of them say it's Razer. Razer's like the 800-pound gorilla. So I always wondered, like, where does, for lack of a better, phrasing, where does most of your money come from? I'd say, like, is it keyboards? Is it mice? Like, where are you guys most dominant? Where do you guys want to improve it?
Well, I mean, it's really weird for us at Razer to be sort of referred to as dominant. I mean, we're a pretty small company. As you know, from my background, I've worked for a number of companies. I even worked for some very large engineering companies going back to the 80s and 90s, where I started off my career. And Razer really is a very sort of startup-y feel. We do a lot of stuff because we think it's fun and it's stuff that we want. If we were being hard-nosed about it, there's a lot of products we make that we don't make a lot of money for, but we do make them because of our community and that people want them. And sometimes we do stuff just because it needs to be done. Someone needs to do it, and we'll put ourselves out there and we'll get into some gaming categories. But the one thing that we have in common across all of our products is that really we are first and foremost a brand or a company that is for gamers by gamers. We play games ourselves. We're in gaming for the long haul. We've been sponsoring esports since the 1990s, really, and so it's a bit bizarre to see some extremely large companies, in fact, refer to us as the 800-pound gorilla, because we are actually a pretty small company. We're a small private company. My boss, Min Liang Tan, is the head of product design, and he runs the company. He's involved in every aspect of the company, from the way we design booths through to the stuff we write on packages. It's not written by a faceless corporate marketing organization somewhere. Really, when it says, when it's got Min's name on it, he really did write it.
Well, I mean, I guess I equate you guys to the 800-pound gorilla because, I mean, I was bringing up this thing on social media, so I look at the different Facebook pages and the number of likes that they have. So NVIDIA GeForce, it's a very big brand in the PC gaming, PC market. That has 1.8 million likes. You guys are mostly known for keyboards and mice, have 6.8 million likes. I don't know what's going on there because I think I've asked Kevin, one of your PR guys, I'm like, how do you guys get that? Because we want that for our social media page too. I'm like, are you guys getting spam bots? What's going on here? How are you guys gaming this? So I mean, 6.8 million, which is you guys, versus 1.8 million. That's NVIDIA. That's like voodoo magic. What is going on here? So that's why I equate you guys to the 800-pound gorilla.
Well, it's not so much that we're big. It's just that we've been around for a long time. We've been doing the same thing. The thing that we pride ourselves on is just the consistency of execution. We've been being ourselves now for nearly 20 years, and we're. I was giving a chat. I work in San Francisco, so I'm a bus ride away from your office, here on Lombard. And about once a month or so, we have a sort of gathering, especially for new guys who join the company. And I was talking to some engineers just a bit about the background of the company and the culture, and sort of addressing sideways that point you were just asking me about. And just the morning, I knew I needed to sort of talk for 30 minutes. So I realized in my office I had a Razer Boomslang 2000 from 1998 that Robert Krakoff gave me, and in its original tin. And just for a kick, I got it out along with Razer Mamba Tournament Edition, which we just started shipping a couple of months ago. They both come in a tin. You open the tin, you're immediately addressed. I mean, nowadays it's from Min Liang Tan. Back in 1998, it was Robert Krakoff. It says it has the same tone, feel, has the same logo. The three-headed snake is still there. You can tell it's the same company. And there's not many products that you can pick up today, and you can pick up a product by that same company 20 years ago and still get the feel that it's the same individuals who are doing it, making the design decisions. And that's really the reason why. I mean, I made a joke. It's a well-known it's a well-known fact that Min will personally pay for a tattoo if you want to get a three-headed snake tattooed on your arm. And there's a fair few people who've taken him up on it. I kid you not.
Wow.
But the thing is that you think about how many brands that are out there today, especially in the gaming space. I mean, would you really go and get their logo tattooed on your arm? Because there's every chance there's a corporate marketing group in those companies that's going to change that logo because it's the wrong shade of green, or the blue is this year's color.
Yeah, Corsair, one of your old companies, kind of went to the tramp stamp thing.
Logitech recently changed their logo as well.
Yeah,
did they? They're rebranded now. They have all the Logi stuff. Yeah. They've got.
But I guess they have gone through a couple. Different
they've gone through a few
right?
iterations of their logo.
And they're not unique. A lot of companies do that. But you look at companies like ourselves, and dare I say, like Harley Davidson. The reason why a brand like that, well, first of all, these are brands that are passionate about what they do. They don't dilute what they do because, they're just doing one thing well and they keep doing it. And you keep doing it for 20 years and you build up 6 million likes on Facebook.
I still think some of it's spam bot exists.
No, they do not allow that, actually.
You mentioned, you alluded to Razer's size being a private company. What is the employee headcount?
I have to be careful because there's some things I can talk about and there's some things I can't talk about.
You guys are making self-driving cars, aren't you? You have a self-driving car plant.
No, but we have several hundred employees around the world. Not thousands, but it's in the hundreds. We have quite a large office here in San Francisco where we do engineering for the Blade laptops and for Forge TV in some areas. We have a big software team here in San Francisco. In Irvine, California, we have a US marketing team. In Hamburg, we have a European sales and marketing team. Our corporate headquarters is, our main office is still in Singapore, and that's where most of my team is that do the development for gaming peripherals.
Gotcha. You guys also recently did announce some sort of partnership with Lenovo, right? Can you sort of talk about what's going on there?
I can talk broadly. It's actually not my part of the business. It's the system side of the business. But I think it's a strategic alliance that we're pretty excited about. It brings a very large, very well-trusted brand in the PC space, which is Lenovo, along with Razer, which is a very innovative and very focused, also gaming-focused brand. And I think going forward, you can sort of prepare for some exciting announcements about the ways we can tie those synergies together.
So it's not just like shipping Razer peripherals with Lenovo systems. It's
no, although that's not out of the question. But no, it's more than that. It's really about a way of combining the scale, expertise, and worldwide presence of Lenovo with the gamer-focused knowledge and the feedback and the 6 million Facebook likes that we have from gamers to create something that's really gamer-specific.
Got it. So I do want to talk about one thing. Whenever I talk about Razer with, just gamers and stuff like that, a common trend seems to happen, not all the time, but often some people will say, I like their mice or their keyboards or whatever, but not a big fan of the software. I think some people are bothered by the fact that you have to register, sign up, create a login. Logitech, I don't think makes you do that, so some people view it as a little intrusive. And also, it's like the driver updates. Like sometimes you have to install updates for the Synapse software, and then it requires a system reboot. And it's like even NVIDIA updating your drivers, your video card drivers, doesn't require a reboot. But so why does a mouse update require one? Can you sort of speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, just at a technical level, when you do update the sort of mice we're talking about that we make now, the drivers are doing some very low-level stuff on the mouse, and they do require sort of kernel reboots. I mean, your viewership is pretty smart about that sort of thing. I mean, you know enough about PCs and the way kernel drivers work to realize that sometimes that's necessary. Now, why is it necessary for the software to reboot so often? And that is an issue. We've heard the feedback, and despite all the technical background and mumbo jumbo I could sort of feed you, really, at the end of the day, if it is rebooting too often, or even if it's perceived to be, then that's an issue. So we take it very seriously, and we are looking at it. On the bigger topic, it's there really is nothing sinister behind Synapse, and you probably find that it in this day and age, using your being able to personally log into something so that your settings are saved on the cloud is actually more of a positive than a negative. One of our best-selling mice, in fact, one of the best-selling mice in the world, is the Razer Naga, and it's got 12 buttons on the side, and you can program pretty complex macros behind each and every one of those buttons, and that's actually really important for its use, especially for MMO players, for example, who put a lot of spells and things on there. Well, it would be a real bummer if you bought a new Naga and it didn't pick up the settings you had, or if you set it up on your desktop system and then you go out with your Blade laptop and you have to do it again. I mean, that would be a real pain. So that's the benefit it gets you. On our side, we're extremely concerned about data security because we really are sort of bordering on the sort of tinfoil hat brigade as far as paranoia about data, and we assume that that's true of our users as well. The thing about gamers is that gamers tend to be a lot more savvy about websites and about using their logons and so on. But we only ever ask for it once. With a lot of our competitors, particularly the bigger companies who compete against us, if you want to download their software, you often do have to put in an email address. If you want to get on their support forums, you do have to give your email address. Often, again, get another logon. If you get onto their, if you want to go onto their store and buy something, you have to give another logon. Well, we don't do that. We've always had a single sign-in. you get your Razer ID, and it is your link between us and your user. If you go on to Razer Insider forums, that's how you log on. If you save your Synapse soft settings, that's how you log on. If you buy a Razer Nabu wearable, that's how you register it. That's how you register your iPod app. So, I do understand that it's an extra step you have to do, but you do only have to do it once, and I can only assure our users and fans out there that we take your data security very, very seriously.
I'm glad that you addressed that, because I think security was a concern.
Yeah.
Another vendor that I talked to, a peripheral vendor, they were actually kind of admiring what you guys were doing with the Synapse software in terms of, it's more than just like macro settings. It's also, you have like audio stuff in there as well, and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
And they were thinking, I won't name who they were, but they were thinking that with you having to create a login, that you guys would eventually start adding more features and then maybe charging for it. Is that in the works at all, or is
Absolutely not.
Okay, so there's no plans to
No.
start charging for it?
No, yeah, absolutely not. It's actually the other way around. One of the we'll be the first to admit that our products, we tend to use the best materials on our products and the highest quality sensors and the best key switches. So our products are naturally not the cheapest you're going to find on the shelf. You'll end up paying more for a Razer product, but we believe it's worth the money because you end up with a better product. But part of that augmented feature set is the ability to store and for us to provide you with extra features by connecting it up to Synapse. So it's a very integral part of the product, or product experience, if I've got my marketing hat on.
So, you mentioned that like a bunch of people at Razer play video games. Do you play games? And if so, what are you playing right now?
I do. I don't play as many as I like. I think, like a lot of people, I'm still working my way through Fallout.
I'm waiting for like the bugs to be patched up right now.
Yeah.
I think, and then the mods to be.
Well, as I was saying, my engineering team is over in Singapore, so I do a lot of late night calls. Singapore is like the other side of the date line, so often a busy part of my day is from like 5 p.m. in the evening till about sort of like midnight. And Fallout 4, like a lot of people, I pre-ordered it from Steam. And it was, I think it was the 10th it was going to go live. But I didn't realize it was going to go live at midnight East Coast time. So I was on a conference call with some guys, and it was like 9 p.m. on the 9th in the evening, and suddenly it popped up and said, you can play Fallout 4. So I immediately started playing it. It's a great game. But that's what I'm playing at the moment.
Did you ever play Fallout 3?
Not all the way through. I did start playing it, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm a little bothered by I haven't played too much of it, but so like in the game before, when you use VATS, it would pause the thing, but now it's like slow moving, and it's just like I used to like to take my time and stuff like that. So apparently, I think I'm the only one that's actually complaining about it.
Well, it's a bit of both. It's an interesting game just at a meta level, because it's sort of like combining almost MMO type things, aspects that we first saw like in World of Warcraft maybe 10 years ago, and sort of almost FPS stuff as well, especially if you go into the sort of first-person view, in some of the battle scenes. But then you've got things like VATS, which is much more of a sort of a
turn-based,
RPG. Yeah. So it's an interesting. There's something in there for everyone. It's a good game.
Speaking about like games and like in virtual worlds and things like that, I think something that might change that whole entire fundamentals of that is VR. And you guys have OSVR and stuff like that, the open source virtual reality headset. Are you guys still pushing that, and are you guys making peripherals for VR? Can you touch upon that a little bit?
Yes and yes. Pushing is probably the wrong word. The background to OSVR was, when some things a couple of years ago, as things started developing on the VR side, we were looking for. It's really all about the games. The reason why your readers build sort of high-end PCs is typically to play games. The reason why they buy our peripherals is because the games are compelling, and that's going to be no different with VR peripherals or VR headsets. We need the content, and the worry was that if it's a closed system, it will end up becoming on the PC, that is, if there's too many proprietary drivers and proprietary support needed, then two things will happen. One thing is it will only be the big studios that can afford the commercial risk of doing it. The smaller guys won't do it, because the worst thing is to develop a game and then find the hardware that you need to play it is not available, or the company's gone out of business or something. And then the second issue is that the games that come out of big studios tend to be very, very safe. So you'll end up getting VR versions of, actually I won't name any names, but it'll be
Call
big
of Duty
titles.
17.
Exactly, it's going to be the equivalent of the game version of Rocky 16 or something, and no one wants to see that. We want the sort of innovative games that indie publishers do. So to sort of de-risk it for both the hardware manufacturers and software developers, we kicked off the initiative for OSVR, which is deliberately not Razer branded. It's a separate entity. It actually doesn't report into me, it reports into Min directly. It's a separate project. And the reason why it's not Razer branded is that the O part of it is open, and we don't want it to be proprietary to Razer. So we have a number of partners. If you go onto the site, you'll see there's a lot of partners on there as well as Razer, and there's more joining. I mean, Intel recently announced they were joining it, and we're hoping to get some other big name partners involved as well. But the point is that there would be an open source common platform.
So this is not necessarily a hardware thing.
No.
Okay, it's like
are you talking more about like an open API for everyone to use?
Correct.
Okay.
And the OSVR HMD, the head-mounted display that we're shipping at the moment, we call it the Hacker Development Kit, because that's exactly what it is. It's one possible implementation of how that API can be supported in hardware. And we're encouraging people to take it apart and hack it and improve it, and that's really what we want. In parallel, my group within Razer is developing input devices for VR.
Is it going to be both for Oculus and the Vive? Or?
Yeah, in fact, Oculus is supported by the OSVR code.
So you can use the OSVR within Oculus?
Correct. So if a game is developed with OSVR, it'll support a multiple number of headsets. It's not just tied to the OSVR branded headset.
Okay. I guess...
I had a question to follow up, because since the platform, the API is open, one of the big things, because I'm a Linux person, and a lot of our readers, Linux people are very vocal, very passionate about their operating system, but it seems like they're the redheaded stepchild when it comes to device support, when it comes to development in terms of game, AAA titles, things like that. By developing an open platform, are you also kind of reaching out to the open source community at large and trying to push developers to cater to those users as well?
Well, there's actually there's two halves to the answer to your question. First, on the OSVR platform is for the PC, and it's really aimed at PC game developers. And the sole purpose is to provide sort of a standard API interface, so that commands and controls are abstracted to a level that it can be supported by a number of different types of hardware, a number of different brands of hardware. That's the idea. But specifically with Linux and the open source community, I don't really have a crisp answer for that, because it depends on how it opens up. I mean, the open part of it really was to get multiple developers and encourage a wide variety of games to be supported. But I have to say, I'm not an expert on the way that's going to be sort of implemented out there, or how we're going to work with the open source community. As far as Linux goes, we are working at every day trying to improve our Linux support, and things like the Steam OS is now shipping. In fact, I recently bought an Alienware Steam OS box, and as these sort of Linux platforms grow in size, it is going to become increasingly important. We're trying to do that anyway. We do have native support for Linux anyway, but some of the specialized product features we do are not yet supported on Linux, I must admit.
I think my concern with OSVR is it seems like Oculus has their own Oculus store going on, and then Valve has obviously Steam for VR or whatever. So I feel like you're probably going to see the VR camps split. And is anybody going to My concern is anybody going to adopt your open standard?
Well, I'm hoping that the intention of the open standard is to be a superset of all of that for exactly that reason. It's if the camps do split, if game developers support OSVR, it means that not just OSVR hardware that's made by Razer, but basically anyone can develop for it because it's an open platform. And but the whole point is to try and create that. If you think about mice and keyboards, there's something, there's HID, which many of your listeners will be aware of, the Human Interface Device Standard, which is a very basic protocol for working with the Windows operating system for taking, mouse and keyboard inputs and ASCII code and turning it into something the computer can use. So that's such a level platform that, the three of us could form a company tomorrow, make a mouse, and make a mouse and start selling it, and there'd be no issues with compatibility with games that support mice, for example. And we want to get to that level of compatibility for VR as well in 3D space.
Got it. So can you talk a little bit about some of the peripherals that you're making for it? Is it going to be similar to, the Oculus kind of, basically Oculus and the Vive are actually using pretty similar, VR controllers. They're more or less like Wii nunchucks.
Well, actually, if you go back, it's a bit of a cliche in my business, but it was slightly ahead of its time. But the Razer Hydra was announced 3 years ago.
Sure.
And for a lot of VR developers, that's still one of the sort of standards they use.
Yeah, they're sold out. We tried getting some, and they're just all gone.
They're selling pretty high
I emailed Kevin, the Razer's PR guy. I'm like, hey, can I get some of these? And then they're like, sorry, we're all sold out.
But there's that type of controller, which is the most. At this early stage, there's lots of other ways of interacting in 3D space as well. And one of the first products that we've been developing, we've already announced, was a co-development with Intel on, we call it Project Winona, and it uses the Intel RealSense depth sensing camera. And that we've already shown some demos at shows of where the camera is actually mounted to the head-mounted display facing forward. So it means you don't need a controller in your hands. So it's basically picking up your hands and bringing them into the virtual world. And then the plan is to use gestures and so on to be able to create either using physical objects or virtual objects to create things within the 3D world. I mean, that's one possible direction and one that we've been working with the developers to create. Because, the most natural, as Steve Jobs said, the most natural stylus is your finger, although his company recently rethought that. So we withhold the right to maybe rethink that as well on our side. But right now, the most natural input device really is your hands.
Yeah, so it sounds like that's almost an AR/VR hybrid solution, which is kind of cool. And I agree that I would love to see my own hands in VR as well. I think the one drawback there, I feel like solving the controller issue when it comes to VR is so hard because there's sometimes where I want to see my hand, and like let's say I'm trying to pick up this bottle here, right? It would be really. In that system, in that proposed system, it would be kind of awkward if there wasn't a bottle there, and I had to pretend like I was holding one. That would also break immersion as well. So, one benefit of actually holding like a Wiimote-like thing is that, you can pretend it's like a sword or like a gun. So I feel like it's a really tough problem to solve.
It is. I mean, there's a number of ways around it. The most obvious one is to use a controller, and something like an Xbox 360 controller is what even Oculus were using that to demonstrate their product until very recently.
They're shipping with an Xbox controller.
Yes, right. And but they announced the prototype of the Touch, which is sort of their vision for the way that can be adapted. But there's a number of different other permutations of those sort of control buttons that can also be done. We're looking at a number of different ones of them. I don't have a product that I can really tell you about now, but there's a number of different directions we will be going in the future. But again, I still come back to my first point. It's really down to compelling content. It's finding, it's finding a game that we can integrate with so that we get a really tight, very intuitive response. I mean, the Wii Nunchuck, or at least the Wii controller when it came out, it's quite a few years ago now. That really took off because of Wii Sports. And, I mean, there's families up and down the world, well, all around the world, who are playing sort of tennis in their front room for the first time. And it's one of those sort of crappy little games that if you described it, you couldn't really imagine doing it. But because they got the interaction of that controller and that simple, stupid little game so great, they sold a lot of
That's my favorite game of all time, you're dissing. It's so deep.
Well, actually, it's pretty high on my list as well. It's a pretty important game, I think. But
I am deeply offended, sir.
But I just quote that actually as a positive because it was a very good interaction. It was a very good integration of the control and the game, and that's the sort of thing we need in the VR world as well.
In terms of controllers and human input, do you see developers of input devices trying to do like a one-size-fits-all device that does everything? Or do you see kind of a spectrum of devices that you would have for different situations? Just like you would have, for flight sims, you have a throttle and a joystick, or collective if you have a helicopter. But, you have this big spectrum of devices. Do you think that one device will really be the best way to do input? Or do you think that maybe someone might be switching devices, between games or even in-game if they're in, changed a vehicle or something like that?
That is a really good question, and as you probably already know, I mean, it's a very difficult one to answer. I think the reality is that there will be, I mean, naturally, if I being in the business, I really hope that the public will embrace a wide variety of different peripherals. But the thing is that, an investment in a game is a big investment, not just in money, but in time. And when you start playing a new game, if you have to use a particular controller with it, that's actually quite a limitation. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes that could work very, very well. Like Guitar Hero was a great, it was a great example of that, having a dedicated controller that really added to the gameplay. But in general, I mean, there has to be a general purpose way of controlling within, especially if you're talking about VR, within the VR space. And it's a difficult thing to do. I mean, even within PCs, I mean, we think of PC controllers being a mature area, but, with things like, if you guys have played with the Steam Link box, mm-hmm. I mean, it's actually pretty cool. Suddenly, without building a computer in your living room, you can now get your PC games streamed to your TV. But then the problem is now you're in the living room, so how on earth do you control it? And, even answering that question has proved to be, pretty complicated.
Speaking of Steam and the Steam Link, have you had a chance to play around with the Steam controller at all?
Yeah, actually.
What are your thoughts on that?
I have. I would echo a lot of the stuff that's been written. That there's. So first of all, I've never enjoyed. I mean, I enjoy using an Xbox controller on an Xbox or a PlayStation controller on a PlayStation, but playing a game that was written for the PC, especially the PC version of it, using a gamepad has always been a bit of an awkward, sort of matchup. I think that Steam have done as good a job as I've ever seen at trying to solve that, using their touchpads, even the, controlling the sensitivity of it and so on. I think it works very, very well. So I would go as far as saying, I would agree with the people, many of the reviewers who say that it's probably the best sort of gamepad style controller for running native PC games that's out there. I mean, I would agree with that. However, I think that still falls way short of even the most basic mouse and keyboard. And, well, as you know, Jimmy, I was showing you at the end of last week the latest version of the Razer turret, which is your guys' lap board, right? Exactly. Yeah, this was a lap board. I'm really excited about that, by the way. Yeah, I'm hoping to get you one as soon as I can prize one from my colleagues in Singapore. But it was something we showed originally with the Forge TV, which is our Android set-top gaming box. And we showed it at CES last year, but it's taken us a good year to get that just right. But it's usable for a lot more than just our own Forge TV. You can use it with, of course, Steam Link or even Steam OS, as well as with the PC.
And it's going to be powered over USB, or is it Bluetooth?
It actually has both. It can be paired Bluetooth, but it also comes with a 2.4 gig wireless USB dongle. So basically anything that accepts a USB input, like a set-top box or even some TVs, could still be used with it as a mouse and keyboard. But the innovation on our side is that we put a little magnet in the bottom of the mouse and on the mouse mat, so it balances on your lap, but the mouse isn't going to sort of fall off the mouse pad if you lean over. But we've spent a lot of time getting that magnetic pull just right, so that it'll stop it falling off, but still leaves it moving freely enough on the surface. It's taken a lot of effort.
I'm glad that you brought up the Razer Turret, because I did want to bring that up next. And it seems like it's the new thing, which is great, because while I like the Steam controller, to me it's not as good as a keyboard and mouse, as you mentioned earlier. And some of your competitors are making it as well. I think the first company that I've seen to reveal something like that was Rocat with the Sova, and also Corsair is releasing one as well early next year, I believe. Theirs is a little bit different than yours. Theirs is they're all lap boards. Theirs, however, has a mechanical keyboard, 10 keyless, and a much larger mouse pad area. And they're kind of heftier and bulkier. But at the same time, you get a mechanical keyboard and you have, a larger, mouse surfacing area. You guys, on the other hand, are going with almost like it's like a laptop keyboard, almost like very similar to what you guys have on your Razer Blades.
Yes.
And then the trackpad or the mouse pad is much smaller. Yeah. You guys are combating that a little bit by going with the smaller mouse. I believe it's a offshoot of the Orochi.
Yeah.
And then you're adding the magnetic thing to keep it from slipping, which is interesting. I played around with it last Friday.
Yeah.
And while I do appreciate the mouse not toppling over, and I haven't tried it like plugged in playing a game. It was just like sitting on my lap. I'm a little curious to see, because it does the magnets do create an extra layer of almost tension, because it kind of pulls. And is that, like, internally, have you guys found that to be a distraction at all? Because it's a little bit more resistance.
Well, so it's a difficult problem to solve. As you correctly say, there's a number of companies out there proposing solutions for pretty much the same problem. We felt that the problem to be solved was something that you can use in your living room. You can use with the so-called sort of 10-foot UI experience, like big picture mode on Steam, but was not so obtrusive that it was going to require rebuilding your living room. Because let's face it, if you're going to, some solutions I've seen out there, they're like recreating an entire desk, not just a desktop, but the desk structure itself. So you can put a mouse and keyboard on it in your living room. But, dude, if you're going to do that, just play in your office, for heaven's sake. Go and get a desk. So we felt that those were not legitimate solutions to the problem. So with Turret, we were trying to create something that... there's a lot of small keyboards out there as well. Let's not forget, there's living room keyboards have been around for many years, but none of them are really for gaming. So we designed ours so that it's got 10-key rollover, it's got 100% anti-ghosting, it's got very fast response. They are actually mechanical. They're scissors switches, not the mechanical key switches we put in the Razer Black Widow, for example. But for they're all possibilities, but they all add weight and size. And the Turret solution, in fact, the page has been up for a long time, so your viewers can go and Google it while they're listening to this. But you'll see it's a very compact design. It folds up pretty small. It's in a recharger base, which is very convenient, and it gives you that feel of mouse and keyboard control, which we have not seen created with a joystick or even a touchpad. So coming back to your point about the magnet weight, it's a difficult thing to balance, because we've had versions that we tested where the magnet was so loose that it would sort of basically fall off if you tipped it over in an angle. But actually, one of the problems with the TV is not just the sofa, but it's the fact that TV resolution is a lot less than your computer monitor nowadays. So, you're typically playing on 1080 lines, and, if you're particularly fortunate, you might have a 4K TV. But so to play on those sort of resolutions, you really do have to ratchet down the DPI and the sensitivity, and you do have to have a different way of playing. And the other thing is that if we had a mouse mat that was full size, we'd end up with a very large keyboard indeed. So we chose the DPI of the mouse and the mouse mat to be typically something that would be very easy to use on something that had the resolution of a 1080p TV, which is how most people will be using it. So that's really what we designed it around. Going forward, as people use it, we'll take their feedback and make modifications. But fundamentally, I don't see anyone else sort of treating this problem seriously. I mean, I'm not sure that some of these solutions are really viable. My wife's a very tolerant lady, but I can't see her putting half of those other solutions I've seen on the market in our living room.
So I was actually talking to Rocket, I think it was last year's CES, and I actually feel like they are taking it serious.
I didn't mean Rocket, by the way.
Okay,
Sorry.
So Corsair, that means you. So Rocket, I mean, the reason why I say that I think they take it seriously is because this thing was supposed to come out, I feel like, 2 years ago or something. And it's been delayed several times, and I've met with them, and I've seen it several times, and I think Alex has seen it as well.
Yeah, I got to see it and do a hands-on with that as well.
Yeah, so it seems like they're delaying, like they're constantly delaying it because to me, it seems like they want to get it just right.
Yeah, from what I gathered from their team is that they feel that if they released a product that just didn't do it right, there would be just a big blow against them, and then no one, from someone who works at the company, you know that if you have one product and you have this big launch and it just flops, then it's not just a waste of your time, but it can actually hurt the brand name and everything else like that. So I know that it felt like they were really trying to get it right, and they had a lot of things that did feel right, but there are also things that they clearly need to work on. So a couple of reasons I wanted to bring them up is they're using mechanical switches, and I mean like the cherry switches, and I know you guys have your own solution there as well. After championing traditional mechanical switches for so long, why not have it here? For starters.
Well, I mean, that's definitely a direction we could go in. I mean, with this first one, we were really trying to make it compact because we already make keyboards and mechanical switches, and I mean, there are ways to use our existing keyboards in the living room. It's not sort of out of this world. I mean, I've seen some third-party solutions that almost look like the sort of thing that you get sort of over your hospital bed.
Yeah, I saw I saw on Amazon. It was like you could almost build like a couch fort thing. It's like three pillows or something, and then you can. And then there was I think a cup holder even.
Exactly.
It's like a man cave thing,
Right. And there's solutions like that are out there. So we were really looking at the other end of the spectrum. We were trying to find something that was practical, because it's all based on the fact that you're playing. There's a reason why you're playing in the living room, not least of which is probably because you're playing socially. I mean, we were talking about Fallout 4 earlier. That's actually a great game to play with, an audience.
Spectators.
With spectators. And that's the sort of game that would work well there. Probably less so, a competitive MOBA or FPS. And based on that, we were designing really around that sort of use case.
Okay.
If FPS in the living room, becomes a major deal, then we'll create a CS:GO keyboard for your living room. But I can't see that happening in the near future.
And so the second reason I wanted to bring them up is because I think last year at CES you guys unveiled the turret, I think, and then I happened to visit their booth like the day afterwards or something like that. And I mentioned to them like, hey, have you guys seen the Razer turret? And then they're like, yeah, we saw it. Obviously we haven't touched it yet or seen it in person, but we read the press releases and all that stuff. And I was like, it seems like it's kind of similar to this, going in a more portable, light direction. What do you guys think? And they were, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they were basically of the opinion that they didn't think it would work out that well because of the weight. Like they said, according to their internal studies, you kind of want to have like a certain heft.
Yeah,
and then they also have like padding underneath their board as well. And they said it had to do with like ergonomics. Like they basically alluded to the fact that they've tried like other systems, and you kind of have to go with something like this, or otherwise your wrists or something like that start to hurt after several hours. I don't know. Did you? I mean,
if you went up to one of our competitors who had a product out in that space and they said, well, I've never used the Razer product, however, I'm sure it doesn't work for this and this reason. Well, I mean, it's...
shots fired, man.
I mean, I don't want to comment on this because I haven't used it.
Sure. But, from what you guys have said, basically tested in your labs, there's no ergonomic issues that you guys are aware of?
Well, I mean, certainly not the ones that you were alluding to earlier, but we spent a lot of time just trying to, there's a solid rubber base on the bottom, which adds a bit of friction so that, it will sort of stick to your pans so that it doesn't slide off. So we spent a lot of time looking at that, but, really the best ergonomic solution is always to play at a desktop. You're not going to get better than that. But given that the whole point of playing in your living room is because you want to play in the living room, we believe that this is a very convenient, very responsive, very gamer-friendly solution, which a lot of the keyboards out there, and I'm not talking about the gaming products that are not on the market, but just the ones that we have used. Because most living room keyboards, some of them are, some sort of multinational competitors of ours, but they're really targeted at using on a smart TV. So you can enter your ID into Netflix when you log on, and then you never use the keyboard again. Well, that's a very different use case than someone who's going to be gaming, because you don't need 10-key rollover for that. You don't need anti-ghosting. So we were really designing around something that was as convenient enough to have that sort of spouse acceptance factor, so that your wife or husband or girlfriend or boyfriend won't.
Come on, most of your users don't have wives. I can say that just so you don't have to. So I was going to move on to reader questions, unless, Alex, do you have any other specific questions that you wanted to ask or anything?
I didn't have anything off the top of my head, no. I might come up with something if I'm inspired by a reader question.
Go ahead and...
Because I was looking at them, but...
Interject. So we reached out to some of our readers on Facebook and Twitter. So Zach Weibel asks, and this is more of a question for the system side, but, while you're here, it'd be cool if you could chime in if you can. Have you considered building thicker versions of your laptops that don't overheat immediately? So these guys are not. These guys are a little bit more brash than I.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in the development of the laptops. However, I have been a user of them for quite a while, and like a lot of people out there, and probably like Zach, assuming of course Zach is a user, that the real innovation in the Blade is the fact that it's using a desktop performance high-end Core i7 processor with the latest graphics chips, and it's running them at full power. And it's not a sort of a sort of a mealy-mouthed sort of 2 graphics chip thing. I mean, you're getting good battery life, you're getting great performance, you're getting good screen resolution, and you're getting that in a form factor that's there's a comparable thickness to a MacBook, and that's quite that's quite an achievement, and that's done without sort of big fans. Now, making a laptop out of plastic instead of metal, making it thicker, putting more fans in it, will create a product that many products that are already out on the market. But the issue with those is that you end up with lots of hot air being blasted out somewhere. So at the end of the day, physics dictates that the heat's got to come out somewhere. But I actually think that my colleagues on the system side have done a pretty amazing job on the thermal management. I mean, those are really great keyboards and great laptops. The Blade series, I heartily recommend them to anyone who's never tried them. Making it thicker, even if it solved the heat problem, which I don't think it would just make it uglier.
Yeah, I think the problem will be mitigated over time once Intel and NVIDIA are they get better with TDP and things like that. I mean, already I think the latest Razer blades are cooler than the first ones.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. Also, out of curiosity, are you guys? I always wondered, did you guys ever partner with an OEM to get into that space? Into the notebook space.
Well, we didn't.
Or is it your own fabrication thing? Because I'm seeing
it's all ground up.
Okay, because
it was. I mean, the history of the project is actually Min really was disappointed with the laptop solutions that were out there. I mean, he travels a lot, and like a lot of us, he wanted something with a decent sized, high resolution screen that was running, like a top processor and a top graphics card that could play his games at a decent frame rate. That's what he was after, and there was nothing out on the market. And the things that claimed to be either had ridiculously short battery life because of the heat, or they were just huge. And you're lugging something the size of a car battery to power it. So he set off a design team to go and develop what became the Blade. I think it's, as I say, I wasn't involved in the design, but hats off to the guys who were.
I asked because, like, when I first saw the Razer Blade, 17, when it was first revealed, I thought it was, like, gorgeous. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, it's crazy to hear you guys, jumping into the notebook market. Pretty crazy for a peripheral manufacturer. And then about a year or so later, I started seeing other laptops that look very identical to the Blade. So I'm like, did you guys partner up with an OEM, or are they kind of copying off of you guys, or?
Yeah, I mean,
there's some notebooks out there, from like MSI and the Gigabyte that look eerily similar. The chassis is
no, absolutely not.
Okay.
It's 100% internal design. In fact, there's a lot of Razer patents on the way the thermal management works in those.
Gotcha.
I see a question here because it actually has to do with the review I did recently of the Diamondback. Says, been a while since we've seen any devices for us left-handed folks from anyone. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, Razer included, seem to be leaning towards ambidextrous mice for lefties. Usually those top out at middle-of-the-road devices or the low end. The left-handed Death Adder is still my favorite mouse, but I'm worried we'll see it fall off the manufactured list eventually, if not already, and I'd love to see a lefty or at least ambidextrous or Weaver keypad device. So I'll just kind of elaborate on JP's question and comment. A lot of manufacturers don't manufacture left-handed mice. Mice that are supposed to be symmetrical oftentimes will just have the thumb buttons on the left side for righties. Right. So it's ambidextrous in design, but not really when you really sit down and use it. Mm. So is Razer, are you guys going to still keep lefties in mind? Because I know not even people who are left-handed may use the right hand for the mouse, but is it still a design philosophy and marketing philosophy to actually cater to those users as well?
It is, and not just left-handers. We'll continue to do things due to public demand. In fact, the Diamondback itself was something that we brought back because there was such a fan following for it. As I say, Razer's not run like any other company I've worked for before, in a good way. I mean, it's still very... We do stuff because... we get a kick out of it, or our users get a kick out of it. We're not looking at the margins needed for every product before it gets signed off. And we do a lot of things that we do for the community. Left-handed Death Adder is one of those. And bringing back the Diamondback is actually quite interesting because. I've spoken to people who love it because it has a narrower design than anything else. It doesn't have flared sides. It's actually undercut, and it means that a lot of people, myself included, I quite like feeling the mouse surface with my fingertips because especially if you play at low DPI and you do a lot of skating, just having that having your fingers make contact with the surface before the mouse does sometimes just gives you that extra tiny bit of control. And some people prefer that. And modern designs tend to be bigger, wider, with more flared bottoms. But having said that, for every person who loves it, there'll be someone who hates it. And that's the reason why we make the Diamondback, we make the Mamba, we make the Death Adder, we make a left-handed Death Adder, we make all the MMO-centric mice based on the Naga and the Naga Hex. Because for every gamer has their own style and they have their own thing they do. I mean, just one example of that is of us sort of doing some crazy stuff because we thought it was cool. Was the Razer Firefly? Some of you guys probably know about it. It's a mouse mat that connects up with your USB. And it has
I think Alex actually reviewed that, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. We thought it was just like a really cool idea because we could, and we were trying to size the market. I mean, how on earth do you size the market for a USB mouse pad with lights?
Yeah.
But we did it anyway because we thought, there was a group of us at the table, and we all thought, well, we want one. So I mean, there's got to be a market for it somewhere.
I think we did do it as a geek tested item, and I was like, well, if you don't have Razer devices to go with it, it might not be worth your time. But if you've got Razer mouse, keyboard, and you want to synchronize all of them, it might be worth it. I mean, it really depends. It is a cool device, but it's not for everyone. It's hard to justify to the general user.
Did we mention that it's a mouse pad that like glows?
Yeah, it's got a
RGB, right?
Yeah. Well, right now it is one of, if not the best-selling mouse pad in America. I kid you not. It is selling like crazy. It's faster than we can manufacture it. It's doing really, really
So
well.
it's funny because I think it was just like last Thursday. Well, okay. I'm gonna back up a little bit. When I first heard about the Razer Mat thing, I was like, really? It's just, all it does is it glows? I'm like, that's dumb. And then this past Thursday, I go to shoot a video at Max, one of our video guys, and he's a big PC gamer too. And I shoot in his apartment. We're doing this like video review, anyways. He has like a Razer setup, and he's got the mouse pad. I'm like, what is that? And then he goes, oh, it's like the Razer's RGB going mouse pad thing. And I was like, fuck, that looks kind of cool.
Exactly.
I mean, I've still got it at my desk at home from when I was doing the review. I still use it. I plug it in.
It's still stupid, though.
It is.
It's not stupid, but you want one.
But it's like, damn,
It's stupid, but it looks really cool. Like, I look in that room in the office at night, and I see it with the mouse on top of it. I'm like, oh, that does look really cool. It's basically a border. You have your mouse, you have the lights, on the Chroma mouse, and then you actually have the border that matches it. I'm like, oh, that is actually neater than you think it is.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds stupid when you describe it, but it's just sort of cool, and you don't really know why.
Like, one of your engineers was like, hi, man. He's like, check out this mouse pad, man. It glows.
So, but as I say, sometimes we do stuff like that. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But we'll do stuff because we're into gaming and we're gamers. That's why we do it.
I really want one when it becomes like a USB hub, because I think we were both like Max and I were like, man, like they would actually get some utility out of this if they had turned it into a USB hub, because it's a very convenient place to have a USB hub, like right next to your mouse.
Yeah.
So
who knows? We'll bear that in mind.
So I'm going to ask you we have a couple of reader questions, if that's cool. So Paul Brooks asks, why is there such a disparity between the quality of Razer's laptops versus their peripherals? Now, this one's interesting. He goes, there's not one complaint about a Razer Blade, which is the laptop what some guy just complained about, but countless complaints about mice switches failing, keycaps wearing out, membranes not registering, and shady build quality of headsets. Do you guys go through like separate QA departments with both devices or both line of products?
Ouch.
So this is your chance to like say what's up,
Well, so first of all, I mean, we take that stuff really, really seriously. Quality is very, very high on our checklist. Not just the actual sort of fact of whether it's going to fail or not, but the perceived quality. I mean, it makes a huge difference to us. I'll tell you now that one of the critical path items in our production development process is every single product gets signed off by Min himself. He goes through an unboxing. He'll go through. Sometimes he'll actually return the product back to product development and say, hey, this is not ready. Go back and just fix this stuff. And we're not afraid to do that. But, just on a technical level, I mean, our returns are actually very, very low, and our failure rate is even lower. There isn't a systematic failure or anything like that our numbers are saying. But I think part of the problem is part of what we're seeing is the fact that we're just shipping a lot more product than we ever have before. We're getting more and more successful, and there isn't a day goes by that we're not thankful to our loyal users for creating this market for us. So we love it, but staying on top of it gets harder and harder, and we're working really, really hard on expanding our customer support and everything to support the size of business we've become. I mean, it is a challenge because we're not a big company. And we're having to behave like one, and that takes effort. As far as quality, we take it very seriously because it doesn't matter what our QA data says. QA data says that our returns are dropping and that our failures are getting lower and lower as a percentage of sales. But if we get a single user who's turned off by the brand because of something, like your Twitter poster is saying, then clearly it's something we have to take seriously. And I can't say any more than that we will. We try and respond to every single complaint that gets to us.
So basically, they should email you directly if they have a problem with it. Okay. Cass Gamer wants to know, what's the difference between the keyboard switches, basically between, like, let's say the Cherry switches and Razer's green switches. And he goes, I have Black Widow Chroma, by the way, and I love it. So there you go. There's a keyboard warrior that likes
Great.
you.
So thank you. Sorry, who was the name of the...
Cass Gamer at Insomniac.
Oh, well, thanks a lot, Cass. So our Razer key switches was because we were one of the first major brands, anyway, to ship a sort of gaming-specific mechanical keyboard. And
Yeah, you guys don't use any Cherry switches, if I'm not mistaken.
We have used Cherry switches in the past, but our volumes got to the point where we actually had the ability to go and design our own. We didn't need to buy an off-the-shelf switch. So, there's other mechanical switches out there than Cherry anyway. But
yeah, Omron has some too.
We were looking at what we believe to be some of the shortcomings, and we went out and designed our own. As I say, we're a brand by gamers for gamers, and there was some things we felt we could improve, and all of that sort of experience went into the Razer green switch. We also do the Razer orange switch, which is our stealth switch, which is a non-clicky version of it as well, for those people who prefer that. But we looked very, very carefully at the sort of tolerances of the key switch and the make-break point, and also the consistency between individual switches as well, because that can vary a lot in mass production. And because it's our own switch, it meant we could tighten up a lot of those tolerances and produce what we believe to be the best switch.
So what makes green switches gaming switches? Is it faster response time or actuation time?
They're 4mm. I can't remember the specs exactly, but they're a 4mm travel. The make break point is at 2mm, which is halfway down. We have tightened up the consistency because just because of the construction of them, there's a make point on the way down, there's a break point on its way back up again. Because we control the mechanical tolerances, we could get that to be a lot closer, so you get a lot more consistency. So it means that you get more accurate and consistent sort of double and triple taps. The materials themselves and the contacts are something that we could specify very, very closely. And as I say, the spring force as well. In the travel, we can calibrate that so that it's within a very, very tight band. And they're all things that we could do because we designed a custom switch.
Cool. We have a couple other rated questions, but I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up because I think we've gone a little over time. Is there anything that you want to plug or talk about, what you're working on and all that stuff?
For those of you guys who are going out to CES, please do drop by our booth. We'll have a lot of exciting new stuff to talk about. But certainly thanks to everyone who sent in questions and for Readers Maximum PC, of which I consider myself one. And
he just plugged us. That's awesome.
We'll take that one.
Awesome. So that about wraps it up. You can check us out online at MaximumPC.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe to us on Google Play, iTunes, Kindle, Nook, and Zinio. On behalf of the Maximum PC crew, thank you for listening.